Well, hello, YouTube land. This week is going to be exciting for immigration. There's a lot of talk around the fact that whether any kind of an immigration bill is going to be included in COVID package, the upcoming COVID reform bill. What about the immigration bill that Senator Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham are supposed to reintroduce this week on the Senate floor? What's going to happen with immigration? Let's talk more about it. Now, guys, there has been talk in the town about the COVID relief bill that is now stuck in Congress, not being able to move because Democrats want something, Republicans want something. We know how this works, and it's going to be a gridlock, but somehow they need to figure out a way to move forward because COVID is a national emergency. It is a global emergency. My job here is, first of all, to make sure that my listeners, my friends, my family who are spending their valuable time watching this video understand that my opinion is as honest as I can possibly make it out. Now, first, COVID relief bill is stuck. It's not moving forward. Democrats wanted something. They wanted $2,000 checks to be sent out to every person in the United States, raise the minimum wage, and a lot of other things that they want to use as an opportunity to proceed. However, they're stuck because Republicans don't want to do that. We have seen this game play out many times in the past. Now, what is happening currently is that, keeping in mind that the Democrats have a narrow margin of in the majority in House, as well as the fact that they hold the majority or technical majority in Senate, with Kamala Harris, the vice president, casting the tie-breaking vote, they are trying to, or at least some Democrats are trying to proceed or push for their progressive agenda, one of which includes adding an immigration bill into the COVID reform package. Now, here is a letter from the House Democrats that talks about this and requests Nancy Pelosi to include this package. We, the undersigned members, request that you include a pathway to citizenship for essential immigrant workers and their families, Dreamers, TPS holders. Estimated 5 million undocumented immigrants, including 202,500 DACA recipients and 131,300 TPS holders, are essential workers serving our country every day. So they're trying to make a case here that DACA, Dreamers, TPS holders, and some of the other essential workers who happen to be either undocumented or in some shape or form do not have a pathway to green card today, be included in this reform package from a point of view that they should be given permanent residency. They also go on to talk about that, hey, a pathway to citizenship for undocumented essential workers would raise the wage floor, in turn benefit all workers. Inclusion of these protections is not just a necessity for economic recovery, it is an issue of economic and racial justice for communities that have been the most vulnerable to the crisis and left out in previous relief packages. Well, the question is this: what is a COVID reform package meant for? Why is it so important for Democrats? And why are Democrats trying to, quote unquote, shove immigration bill down its throat? Now, the part of the reason it's very important is because a COVID reform package can be passed through what we call a budget reconciliation process. Now, that's just a fancy term for saying that any kind of a bill that impacts finance or financial situation of a country, the United States, may be able to garner a simple majority support and still become the law. So for that, in Senate, you don't need a supermajority support as you may need for rest of the other bills. So all you need is you need to get your 50 Democrats, have Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote, and you're done. That's why budget reconciliation is very important. However, it comes with a caveat. You cannot just add anything you like in budget reconciliation. There is a rule that states that yes, any bill to be considered for budget reconciliation should not impact negatively in the next 10 years to the deficit of our country. Now, you could make a case that giving immigration benefits like pathway to citizenship for Dreamers, TPS holders, DACA recipients, and other larger class of essential worker, undocumented immigrants is not going to negatively impact the financial condition of the country. In fact, you could make up a case that it might positively enhance our situation during this pandemic. Having said that, there is another clause in the billing in the budget reconciliation process, that any clause that you add in the bill should not be a just rider to the bill. It needs to have something to do with the core object of the bill. And that's where, to my listeners, I have to say that this COVID relief bill, talk of the town, and immigration bill being added to it and being successful on the floor of the Senate or the House, this whole talk of the town is just bluster. It's political posturing. It's being able to go to the public and to your town hall meetings and saying that, yeah, look, I sent this letter to Nancy Pelosi. She did not give a damn. But that's all there is. It's bluster. It's not going to happen. Because technically, it is a far-fetched, a ridiculous overreach to include pathway to permanent residency and citizenship for dreamers, DACA recipients, TPS holders, undocumented immigrants of any class in this specific bill, or for that matter, any kind of financial bill. And that is coming from somebody who supports this cause, right? Now, part of the reason is this. This bill does not, or this push to include undocumented immigrants is not limited to having them included in any kind of a financial aid that they were not included before the pandemic kicked in. That could be a good case that could be made for essential workers, for example. But to say that these guys need a pathway to permanent residency as part of the COVID relief bill, and somehow that justifies that, and somehow that needs to be addressed right now and not a couple of weeks down the line, that's not justifiable. So number one is, I do not think that it stands the legal test to be included in the budget reconciliation process. And that's a big problem. The second problem is, from a political point of view, for Democrats who call immigration as their center point or a keystone social issue, for them to be able to, quote unquote, sneak this issue into the budget reconciliation process, COVID relief bill, it just doesn't have the right wavelength. You can think of all kinds of problems arising from this kind of a maneuvering, right? You can see how many negative advertisements, how much negative PR Democrats are going to get simply because people are going to say that, hey, look, they used COVID pandemic to advance one of the most controversial, incendiary topics in this country. Now, they may be able to get away with it from a legislation point of view. That is, they may be able to grant green cards, but I believe that they will have to pay the price for this. So you can have, in one of the House conferences, Julian Castro can go and talk to, Nancy Pelosi, or walk up to the other end of the Capitol Hill and talk to Chuck Schumer and say that, hey, can you sneak in this immigration bill into the COVID relief package? At which point Schumer is just gonna say, or Biden is just gonna say, shut up, dude. That's not gonna work, right? Now, what is going to happen this week? Now, this week is still really, really critical for immigration. It's in fact, it's going to be a big bang point from which everything sort of expands forward. 5, 6, 10 years down the line, when dreamers who are now green card holders or citizens are going to look back at the week of February the 1st or first week of February 2021, and they're going to say it all started. now. And that is that Senator Dick Durbin and Senator Lindsey Graham, normal people in terms of immigration legislation, in terms of understanding what works, what can be advanced in a 50-50 Senate, are going to introduce, like I had mentioned in my previous video, a bill to provide dreamers and DACA recipients and TPS holders pathway to green card and citizenship. It's gonna be sort of a bill that will be used as a template to take things out of the bill while they compromise with Republicans, or add more things to the bill during the same compromise or negotiation talks. So essentially, what can we expect for this bill to include? Of course, if we look at American Dream and Promise Act of 2019 or Dream Act of 2019, it's going to have the basic tenets to have dreamers that are people who came to the country when they were younger than 18 years of age, on which the alien entered the US and has continuously resided in the US since such entry, and came to the country since the date that is 4 years before the date of the enactment of this act. Now, remember, this is really, really much more conservative than the sweeping US Citizenship Act of 2021 introduced by Biden on day one that he knew of all people is not going to go anywhere. That gave pathway to citizenship to any undocumented immigrant who came to the country before or prior to January 1st, 2021. That's not going to happen. But at least this gives you a little bit of cushion period and say, hey, if you came to the country 4 years before the enactment of this act, you are qualified. And of course, you've got to be able to go to school, say that you're a protective member, you're going to get a conditional status that you can eventually convert to permanent status, and then be put on a pathway to citizenship. So a legalization pathway for dreamers. There is a special procedure for applicants with DACA, which is essentially they may not even have to go through the conditional status if you're already a DACA recipient, right? So if you're not already signed up with the DACA program and you think you qualify for it, you better sign up as quickly as possible, because it's going to make your life much, much easier. Whatever the bill is passed through Congress in the next few weeks, couple of months, it's going to definitely have some sort of an expedited pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients. Why DACA recipients, and why not the larger dreamer population? Now, DACA recipients, they fall into a category of population that have relied upon a government program for a very long time. And that principle is called reliance interest. In fact, that was what Supreme Court actually used to deny Trump administration their rescission of the DACA program. Because what Supreme Court and what other academics say about reliance interest in the case of DACA is that when President Obama came out in 2012, he said that DACA recipients, folks who came to the country before 2007 and before 16 years of age and follow these other steps and fall into this other categories and meet these other requirements, get work permits and protection from deportation. That in itself is not a reliance interest, even though it is a good point to be made. What the most important thing in reliance interest is, in addition to these benefits, there was no ostensible expiration to these benefits. Essentially, when President Obama came out, he said that every 2 years you could renew your DACA status. He didn't say after that, or after 5 years, or after 8 years, you can no longer renew. That means the perpetual nature of this program was enough of a platform, enough of a reliable platform and an infrastructure that allowed DACA recipients to sort of build their lives on top of it. That, hey, I'm going to have work permits. I'm going to be not deported as long as I follow these requirements. So I'm going to build my life upon it. Here is a government program that I can rely upon. Anytime the government has to take such program back, they have to provide a much, much stronger reasoning to counteract that reliance interest. And that's where the Trump administration failed. And that's precisely the reason there will always be a special expedited path for DACA recipients, because you guys fall under the category of reliance interest, right? So go sign up for DACA if you know that you qualify. Initial requests are of course open under the Biden administration, so go for it. Sign up, right? Of course, the next thing is the TPS holders who came to the country before 2017. Again, the 4-year cushion, keeping in mind it's 2021, still plays out with TPS and other TPS, rules and regulations. If you meet, you'll be able to put on a path to legalization for green card, right? And of course, eventual citizenship. Now, having said that, these three major tenets, right? The dreamer population, legalization, special expedited pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, legalization for these are gonna act as a template to start with. This is what the Democrats are gonna go to the table with, right? And if you scour the internet and you see what the other senators, like Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, he's a beauty, and John Cornyn, another beauty. These guys have been quite open to negotiations when it comes to DACA. They are really emphasizing on DACA. So given that Democrats have a majority, per se, technical majority in the Senate, they control the agenda. You could imagine a dreamer kind of a legislation passing, which includes not just the DACA, but also the larger dreamer population and the TPS population. That is what you need to watch out for this week. This week, still the news holds. They're going to come out, Durbin and Graham, with their bill, introduce it. The good thing is, it's Durbin who controls now the agenda with Chuck Schumer. They're going to shove this down into judiciary committees behind, get that negotiated, get the negotiations going, get the procedural moves going. And in the back of their heads, what happens behind the curtain is they're going to start counting votes as the negotiation. The moment they hit that number 10, where they need 60 votes to overcome the filibuster passage. And by God, one day I'm going to talk about filibuster and get just wend. As soon as they get over that 10 vote threshold, they're going to bring the vote to the floor, pass it, send it to Speaker Nancy Pelosi in the House. She's going to pass it in a minute. Biden is going to sign it within next few minutes.